work that's going on at UWE, and I'm looking forward to the next hour in terms of the presentation, but also maybe in terms of the questions you get back, and I'll be happy to structure go along.
Fantastic.
In terms of thanks. In terms of the best format for working, I think Kath will be muting all the microphones, but this facility, and I would encourage people to jot their thoughts and questions down in that facility, and I'll keep an eye on it. And when we get towards the end of the time we've got, Julie, I'll try and put those into some sort of shape, and we can perhaps have a discussion around those.
Okay, fantastic, Rob. That sounds good.
Okay, so thank you ever so much, Julie. Really appreciate it. As I say, it's above and beyond the call of duty and testimony to the popularity of the work that you're doing. So over to you, and I look forward to the presentation. Thanks ever so much.
Okay, thank you, Rob. And thank you all of you who are now at your desks for this next hour that we've got in front of you. It's been very interesting sitting here and hearing students popping into offices and colleagues and such like, as is the fantastic higher education work around lunchtime. So what I wanted really to cover with this session was what UWE Bristol is doing around the here, but more importantly around our overall strategic approach, because we have sort of three aspects, of which the here is one of those, and I'd like to take you through. The plan is very much to take you through it for maybe 25 minutes, something like that, and then to really allow as much time as possible to, as Rob highlighted, go through questions which have been captured through the chat, and indeed any verbal questions that you have when we get to the question sessions at the end. So please do capture them via chat as we're going along. Okay, so this is really the UE Bristol view, and we, as I'm sure absolutely all of you are aware, have the key challenges around our larger student community and ensuring a quality of experience for each of those individuals. I mean, we're a very large institution, as many of you are, and are aware of trying to give an individualized support. And so we were really reviewing how we could best undertake the equality of experience for our students. And we were very aware from work that had gone out, and indeed some work that I've got here at the bottom around the QAA policy report that came out just last November, about recognizing the different trajectories that the students undertake, the different kinds of support that they all require, and also being responsive to the students' needs. And we were very aware that in many institutions there was a very key and important role of the personal tutors in really giving that personalised and individualised support together with the myriad other support which is available. We also, for UE Bristol, have a clear ambition within our Strategy 2020 to be generating ready and able graduates. And so therefore, as part of that, we wanted to make sure that we provided as much information to our students about work-based experiences that they could have, and also about some of the attributes and skills that they could gain as they go through their own curricula. And we wanted also to highlight to them the range of opportunities which were available. Many of our students don't come in with a large amount of social capital and really need to be highlighted to the fact that there are a massive number of opportunities and extracurricular activities which would add to their CV, add to their own personal attributes. And we really wanted them to think of ways in which we could pull that all together for them. And in this slide, I've tried to capture some of the very common comments that we've got from our students when we had a previous program, which was a graduate development program. And you'll see that on the left, this is what we heard a lot of as the students arrived with us in year one of their undergraduate, and we started talking to them about generating their CV and thinking about their graduate prospects. Really, unanimously, there was a view of, gracious, 3 years, long time, get a grip. I don't need a full-time job until then. I have a part-time job, which is suiting me fine. And so we had a lot of work to be trying to ensure that they to a certain extent, used the full range of the time with us to make sure that their CV was as appropriate as possible for them becoming ready and able graduates. We also, you'll see on the right-hand side, had a view from nearly all of our students, the fact that they already have part-time jobs. So very different from 10, 20 years ago. Just about all of our students have very real part-time jobs. They undertake these in order to support a lot of their fees and extra costs that they have, and therefore finding the time to go out to placement, to internship, was very, very challenging to them. Also at the bottom was something that we hear and continue to hear, which is that even when they are taking up a range of opportunities, we happen to have an excellent student union here with a range of student rep activities and society work and sports work. And their view was, well, it's not recognised at all once I'm outside of the curriculum, or indeed outside of the extracurricular activities. So we wanted really to pull that together. And so you'll see in the middle in the red, these are the three key tenets or work streams that we really worked on in order to try and support those and recognise those challenges that we had. First of all, it was to ensure a strategic approach to the HERE, so moving away from a compliance approach to one in which the HERE was used as a formative tool from year one, so that the students could gradually see that they were acquiring and there was a recognition of those extracurricular verified activities as they go forward. We also, in the second point, made a strategic decision to ensure that we had academic personal tutors across the whole of the university. We had personal tutors in a number of areas, and they were working extremely well, some of them because of professional requirements, for example, the nurses and midwives, and others because they had always had personal tutors and it had worked well for them in their curriculum. But we specifically highlighted the need across the university for this signpost where the students could have a discussion in a one-to-one manner, which is what we heard very much from our students, was about their aspirations and how to take things forward. So moving it a little bit away from remedial to the wider view of making sure they were all on course. And then we also had the challenge, which was, well, how do we ensure we do get engagement? As much as we would have the HERE available as a formative tool, as much as we would have tutors highlighting that extracurricular activities and wider curriculum work was useful, we wanted really something at the end, and this is where we had some fantastic work from our employability group who devised a UE Futures Award. And to a certain extent, the award itself is really the goal and helps the engagement with the students. But we're very aware that actually it's what the Futures Award encompasses, which will be something which is important for students as they go forward for their, into employability. And I'm going to cover each of those three aspects as we go forward. So this is something that we pulled together to try and show how these different aspects work. And we have, hopefully you can see with my rather poor PowerPoint skills here, a network underpinning the program curricular activities, the UE Futures Award with the co-curricular activities, student advice and guidance, and we have this network of academic personal tutors who are there as a signposting for the students as they go through the trajectory of their degree. And then we have on the right here in yellow, we have the HERE, which is something which starts at year one, which they can start to see it being populated, and then they get their summative here right at the very end of their 3 years with us. And so just taking the HERE and to explaining what we then did. So really for us, the HERE, we had a couple of key criteria that we wanted. One is, as I've explained, we really wanted it to be accessible from year one, so students could then be very familiar with it and would see it as something that they would populate throughout their years with us. We also wanted it to be electronic but also verifiable, and then therefore the students were very much owning their own individual HERE, but we did need to make sure that the university had ownership of this as a something that we were supporting and verifying throughout the course of the students' journey with us. We had also a requirement for it to be available post-graduation, And you'll see as we go through that that's something we haven't yet been able to undertake, but we have some plans in place for that. We also wanted it to do a large amount quite automatically. We wanted to really make sure we had a lean process that didn't require a large amount of resources and support from all of our staff or indeed students. And so all of the current student records needed to be automatically captured as the students went through their degree with us. We also wanted the extracurricular activities to be automatically captured onto the HERE, and they needed to be verified. And we, as many higher education institutions, have a strong amount of collaborative partners nationally and internationally, and we needed to make sure that the HERE was fit for all of our UE students and something that they could take forward to help their employability. And so this is what the first exhibit looked like. This is what went out last year, and is something that the students are now getting familiar looking at. We made a decision that it would look very like a certificate with the sort of watermark underneath. It's a PDF. It has all the requirements that the CRA have asked of the HERE. But we have had quite a bit of comment back from students that although it captured a large amount of information, a lot of the links they found got in the way of the work that they had actually populated through taking forward their degree and their extracurricular activities. So we are in the process of just making this look a little bit more, a little less busy really, a bit more minimal to take that forward. But you can see that pretty much the front page highlights the student and also the program that they are undertaking. And so therefore what we did in order to support that was to make sure that what we've just seen was a static PDF template, that the fields were flexible, and that's the bit that then links in with our student record. We have our own internal student record, which has made this a lot easier, I have to say, because we have experts who are able then to fiddle around the student record to make sure it linked in appropriately. We also, as I've said there in the middle, is that all the modules and marks are directly uploaded from the student record once the marks and credits have been published, so after award boards. And also extracurricular activities are updated by the stakeholders. So for example, our very large peer-assisted learning centre will update all those students who have undertaken PAL, and that then automatically appears on their HERE report. So the students really only have to engage as long as they know what activities are verified, therefore it will then be automatically uploaded once they have achieved that. And I think that has worked extremely well. So here's a couple more screenshots of what it looks like. The interesting aspect in many ways for us around this second page was that we've done quite a bit of work in talking to our employers. We have a large number of employer fairs, and we really took the HERE around and asked the employers how they would find it, whether it was conducive, whether it was supportive. And although the employers were generally supportive of it, the bit that they particularly liked was this bit at the top of this page 2, which was where you have the modules and the module titles. And particularly in some of the areas, accountancy and law, they really wanted to see the marks versus some of the key module titles of areas that they knew professionally that the students had to undertake in order to get the professionally recognised qualification. And so that was a little bit of a surprise, although I think from doing these webinars and discussing with other HEIs, this is something that a lot of employers are highlighting. And so I think for us as an institution, we do need to be very clear to make sure that the module descriptors make some sense externally, rather than being quite an academic venture, which they normally are. And so this is the third page, where here in the middle we have the additional information in section 6, highlighting the additional recognised activities. And again, I've described these, but these are uploaded, as I said, automatically once they've been verified by academic board, and then they appear at year 1, year 2, year 3 as the students work through. We also were very aware that students were quite unaware of what the HERE was, certainly last year, and indeed a lot of staff were. They'd heard of it, but weren't completely aware of what it was. So we have done quite a bit of work in making sure that our web pages are as clear as possible for the students to see the benefits of the HERE. And also to try and move, I think we've learned a lesson from last year that a lot of the students downloaded it just because they could download, a little bit like a lecture, and then attached it, but weren't really aware of how to use it in a CV and such like. So we have done quite a bit of work in trying to explain to them the benefits of the HERE and how they can use it to prepare for their CV, as well as having it as something they can send to the employers as well. So there's a little bit more work to be done, I think, on that. This slide shows what is on our web pages, and as you'll see, we were very clear, because it was formative, we wanted to manage expectations of the students. So here we have Year 1 students knowing that they will hear they will only be able to see a little bit of information about the programme, which is the section 4, and a description of the course content, and that gradually as they get to Year 2 they'll start to see module results because they will have been through an academic board. And also Year 3 it starts to look a little bit more populated as they go through. And that seems to have worked quite well. I think most of the students' queries are mainly on the verified activities. They want to put more on, which I think is all very positive, and we're working on that. But I think they are aware that the formative here will look quite slight to begin with and will gradually be populated. So that was really how we've aligned to the HERE, and we've attached it as part of our strategic approach. And now I really want to highlight then our work with the academic personal tutors, because as much as we can have web pages and as much as we can try and make staff aware of it, really it's the academic personal tutor for us who's really a key conduit who can explain what the HERE is and actually use it as we want, which is to make sure that our students start to see the benefit of populating it early on for the benefit of their CV as they work through either to Year 2 for placements and internships, and indeed the Year 3 for graduate employment. So the academic personal tutor, just to go back, as I said, we had a range of personal tutors across the university, and so really highlighting a key expectation of an academic personal tutor across the whole university is what we did a couple of years ago. And we now have academic personal tutors for each year. We have ensured that what was very critical is that from a university perspective, I've highlighted what the minimum expectation is, of which we inform every year by how does it look and feel in practice. But most importantly, it is that it looks and feels right for each programme. We learnt through doing another programme that I mentioned before, the Graduate Development Programme, which a top-down approach has some engagement, but you never get the full engagement. Whereas now with the academic personal tutor, we have a minimum expectation, and then each of the programmes, each of the departments have aligned to that to make sure it feels right. So those which are in architecture, who have a large amount of discussion and defence work with their students, have a slightly different way of undertaking it than, for example, someone within science, or indeed someone within the fashion and design, again, where they are seeing their students really all of the time. So again, we wanted to make sure each of our tutors were up to date with what they could talk to their students about. And this shows you our resource page, which we've placed on Blackboard, which all staff have access to. And so under the tab of staff and under the tab of APT, Academic Personal Tutor Resources, you'll see there's a whole range of resources there just to help our tutors who may be fully aware of a lot of these activities. Most of our programme leaders would be, but some of our module leaders and associate lecturers who come and help with being a personal tutors may not be as up to date as they would like in many cases, and we do initiate a number of new work streams and activities, and so in order to make sure that everyone was up to date, we also have a whole range of resources there that we always know will link into the most up-to-date information, And also you'll see here on the bottom right, resources to support the HERE, where we have links to what the HERE actually is, the list of approved activities. Also, as I'll be coming to, our UE Futures Award, so that the staff who are undertaking personal tutor role are very, very clear and can click on here to make sure that their students are as up to date with information as they need to be. We also have a rather novel Learning for All portal. We very much recognise that staff are very time poor, and it's wonderful actually having so many people who can spend their lunch listening to this webinar. But what we're very aware of is a lot of staff development and sharing best practice can be undertaken with network events, but very hard to get a large number of staff engaged at the same time due to other priorities. And therefore we've initiated a Learning for All portal which tries to capture our practice. So it has a little bit of resource behind it as far as a repository of information, but we try and keep that absolute to a minimum. And therefore this portal is an e-magazine that 3 times a year is the aim. We update it with new information, and you'll see that last year we had then under ADP, we had an e-magazine that came out which very much talked about academic personal tutoring. We have one of our members of staff who discusses their personal view of the role of academic personal tutoring, and we also then on the right hand side have resources where staff have some video scenarios which help them with how best to mentor, how to reflect on the best way to engage students once they come to see you. In that we have a half-an-hour meeting that would take place. So we will actively add to this as the practices embed more and more, but it has been quite useful, I think, for staff at their desk base to gain the information they may need, and also to have any queries that can be answered. So we've done the HERE, academic personal tutor is a signposting, and then the last aspect of our approach has been to try and gain some awareness and engagement with the students about the value of undertaking co-curricular activities. Although they will see the benefit of populating the HERE, it's actually about really supporting them and saying get on and do these activities, and on top of actually a very full curriculum in addition to their part-time work. So we're very aware that we need to have something quite enticing to take them forward. And we've come up with the UE Futures Award, which I think maps to a number of other awards which other universities have undertaken and taken forward. We piloted this this year and have been really pleased to have 800 students who have already engaged with it, and we have now the first tranche of those actually wanting them for this year's finals, as it were. So we've been really, really pleased about the engagement the students have done. So what does our Futures Award do? First of all, it encompasses a range of extracurricular activities, of which, in order to get the award, they need to achieve 3 of those activities. We've also embedded within this award a little bit of PDP, so they capture their extracurricular activities by attaching to an e-portfolio where they have some very basic reflections to take place to recognise some of the key abilities that they have gained throughout that. And I'm sure we aren't alone in having students who can undertake a whole range of activities but actually still not fully be able to articulate the competences and the abilities that they have gained. So it's really trying to get that reflection. We've also chosen the portfolio because it is a CV builder as well, and it's one which we've been very pleased with because it does mean that the students, as they add their activities, they can pull together a little mini CV, send that to the personal tutor. They can pull together another type of CV depending on the different activities that they've done, send that to a placement tutor or an internship tutor, or indeed, which is our aim, is that they build this up and then as they leave, they leave with a very good ability to build their CV from all of the activities that they've undertaken and reflected upon through their journey with us. And as I said here, importantly, this e-portfolio is available to graduates 3 years post-graduation. So they start to see the benefit of it, we usually find a couple of months after they've left us, and there's lots of activity then. So very quickly, this is what it looks like. We use InfoHub. The benefit for the employability team that we have here is that the InfoHub is where the students will actually go to get their, to do their PDP and to get their UE Futures Award, but also it immediately links them in with any vacancies which are there and other aspects. So we're really trying to pull them into this one port of call for all of their activity. This is what the Info Hub undertakes, is that you can create a record of all the students' experiences, view, edit them, and they can really just take their time in making that look and feel as they want. We didn't want to make it too onerous because we're aware for many students that reflection would put them off undertaking it. So it's really quite light. They can be as full as they want, but they can also undertake it in a very light way, just recognizing the skills that they have taken and gained through their experiences. And this is the bit that I was talking about the CV builder, where they gradually populate and can build up their CV. And so really rounding off, in order to make sure that UE Bristol Futures Award was very clear to the students and that they understood the award was highlighting some of the key skills that they need, we have developed this web page, which is on the bottom you'll see, pulls together activities under the different abilities that we want really the students to click on and undertake. So here, if you click on the leadership skills, you have a whole range of links and awareness around being a peer-assisted learning leader, student rep, student union and president, and also the Vice Chancellor's leadership program, all of which are live and have students on them. Practical experience, placements, all the way to employability events and CDP. Student enterprise, something we want to be building upon, wanting our students to find their way forward around the enterprising activities that they can undertake with us, and also global awareness. And we've just set off a global bursary for many of our students to actually get that international experience. So the last slide, except then for questions, and we'll go through, really for us it's where now. The first point really highlights that we've now, I think actually I should have updated that, 800 is what I was told last week. Number of students are on that. We need that to be increased, and we've got a key KPI to increase that engagement, and they will gain their awards at graduation, which would be fantastic for this year to see that pilot working so well. We need to continually support our academic personal tutors, and we have research and work undergoing now about how best to ensure that students, all students, engage with their personal tutors, not just the ones which are the most engaged. Those that are a little bit more doubtful need to be engaging, keep them on the straight and narrow. We had some challenges last year where our master's students accessed their here. It's available for all our students, but we hadn't yet really looked at how we were best going to ensure that the here was suitable for masters. So that's something that we're working on to make sure that they can gain the same benefits that our undergrads will be doing. We're currently extending our validated sections and getting those approved. And the work really, second from last, is about making sure it's available after graduation. Currently this sits within our own VLE and student records, and therefore there is a time window for when the students download their summative PDF, and therefore we need a information management and identity management system which we're working on, which will allow that to happen post-graduation as well, that they can download it. So that's something we're working on. And the last point, we've made some inroads this year in making sure that our colleges, our partner colleges in the FE sector, all of their students will for the first time be able to get there here, and so we've got all of their activities identified and they'll be able to download. But we also want to look at our collaborative partners, many of those international, to make sure that what at the moment feels quite a British here is something that they can also utilise within their own local areas and employability needs. So that's something that we will continue to work on. And so really, it now is for me to take any questions. And I've seen a couple have appeared as we've gone through. So Rob and I will work our way through.
Okay, Julie, yes, in terms of what we've got at the minute, can I suggest that we start with those, but we also, all the mics are unmuted, but colleagues, if you're not asking a question, could I ask you just to mute your mic independently? Otherwise we're going to learn all about the conversation next to you and what you're having for lunch. So that would be really helpful, and I think two of the areas, actually Paul's just picked up in a sense on the second of those. One is around what happens if people in the academic part of the record, Julie, what happens if people have multiple attempts or there are some issues about what happens in the assessment process, how is that reflected? And I think there's also an area of questioning around section 6 and how different data gets into the here from Paul. And Paul, you might want to come back on that in a minute, but in the meantime, Julie, just want to say anything about the academic side of the record that John was picking up, and John, you may want to come back in on that.
Okay, so academically, all those assessments and such like aren't captured in the 6.1, they're captured in the module. And if I understand your question, so they would be captured in the module achievement. And so what we haven't yet done is identify key activities which are assessed formally and pull those out into 6.1 so that employers can see those. Part of the reason we haven't done it is that we haven't yet identified some key activities which we'll flag in our student records, although we are currently working, because of our 2020 strategy, in identifying assessments which do undertake practice-based assessment and practice-based learning, so we will be better able to identify that these students have done some specific activities in 6.1, in addition to seeing their credit and mark within the module, which may be a little bit more hidden from the employers. Have I understood the question correctly? I don't know if John can come back to us on that.
Hi, Julie, John Jackson.
Hi, John.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, yeah, sorry, my question was more specifically about, I'd noticed on the screenshot of your transcript that you'd indicated with an asterisk, I think it was a prior fail or a second attempt. I think it was a pass at 38%.
Yes.
It's just, I was just wondering around, you know, whether we should be indicating that they have prior fails, or, you know, what are the sensitivities around that?
Yes, I do agree with you, and I think that was a screenshot of an early version. We now try very hard, just as you said, as if they've passed, they've passed. Because that came directly from the student record, it had, as you'd imagine, a bit of granularity in where that mark had actually come from. My understanding is that now all of our PDFs, it's just the mark. It doesn't actually show that they've had multiple goes at it, because everything will have been undertaken through the regulations, and therefore if they've passed, they've actually taken that forward. If it's a fail, it will be taken forward as a fail, and they may do other modules within that.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's trying not to be too granular, but also giving a fair view of how the students have achieved.
Okay, that's great. That answers my question. Thank you. But
Okay,
the second thing I wanted to, or I did make a note of, was that you had none listed in section 6.1 for some of the categories. I was just wondering, what would be the case if the student had completed none of any of the categories? Would it just say none, none, none?
Yeah, this is something we've had so much debate about, you wouldn't believe. What it actually has, as you said, I've got it up on the screen at the moment. So we have it under, I think 6.1.2, we put down a suggestion of none. And one of those reasons of having that there was so that students would go, well, definitely I've got to get something into that. The reality is that if they have a none now, it would be a blank. So we've moved from saying that there's nothing there to actually just there not being anything there, in order, primarily because many of our partners in our FE colleges don't have the ability to take a wide range of extracurricular activities, and so they could well have none, and then a prize, or nothing at all. So we've gone for the blank approach now. Is that
Julie,
okay?
Yeah, yeah, that's great, Julie. Thanks very much.
Okay.
Julie, do you just want to say anything more generally at that point about your, if there are any expectations over time about how many students would be likely to have Section 6 populated in some way with some extra achievements? Because obviously you've got the Futures Award, which is pretty substantial in terms of student engagement and prizes and so on. Do you have a sense of roughly how proportion of students will have content? I take the point about the FE colleges. I'm more thinking about UWE straight students, if I can put it like that.
Yes, yeah. The UE ones were sitting in Bristol, yes.
Yes, indeed.
Where we're at the moment is we have our 2020 strategy as a key aspect around practice-oriented learning. So actually this 6.1 for us is very important, and we would actually expect the majority of our students to have something in here, and that's primarily because even though they may not have gained the UE Futures Award, we would expect them to have engaged with one co-curricular activity. Now, John's point about undertaking activities which are relevant but are sat within the curriculum is a very good one, and that's why I was saying is we're looking at whether we can unpick some selected activities to highlight for employers that actually, even though they undertook a placement, instead of just having a bracket sandwich or SW, which doesn't mean anything really to anyone, actually highlighting it within the 6.1. So there is work to be done to really make sure it feels absolutely right and proper for all our students. But I think we're very, very clear, and what we say to our students and what we hear from our employers is that having nothing co-curricular really is setting you up for a very hard way forward as far as getting graduate employability. So we are, to a certain extent, trying to support them as much as possible to ensure that they put something in there and also are aware of their attributes that they've gained through that.
Okay, fantastic. That's really helpful, thank you. I just wonder if it's worth connecting that to a point from Paul and John, which is a little bit lower down, about the process of things getting into the here. And Paul and John are asking about SITs, but you're actually not a SITs user, you've got a homegrown system, haven't you, as you mentioned?
Yes, that's at the moment.
Paul, do you want to come in on that question at all, or shall we just paddle about with it for a minute or two?
It's a question from John, so I'll hand over to John.
Sorry.
Okay, hi Julie.
Hi.
Yeah, I noticed that you had 5 different data sources there of extracurricular data.
Yes.
Peer-assisted learning prizes, SU roles and so forth. And you use the word or the phrase automatically captured in here, and I guess the devil is in the detail here. I'm really, I'm assuming you've got 5 different databases there with different people managing them, possibly different systems. I'd be really keen to understand how those different data sources actually end up in the here. What is the process? And also within that, if you had, for example, a student who had a role in their student union that they didn't want reflected in the here, how would that be managed?
Okay, thanks there, John. I'll answer both of those, but if I, due to my senior moment, forget your latter one, just remind me. As far as the capturing of the data, what we have at the moment is 4 or 5 different key areas. So we have the offices and the hub of the peer-assisted learning. We have our continuing performance areas, we have the student union, and we have our prizes. And the last one is everything related with employability, so internships and placements and such like, and volunteering. So what we have is a stakeholder group with those 5 key areas where, although I say it's automatically updated, it's captured automatically, and as far as the student's concerned, it's automatic. But actually it requires our stakeholders to input that information. So what we have is a field which they have access to, which has all of the activities, and what they need to do is they find the activity, and then all they need to do, and I say all, but I'm not doing it, is input the student name. So under a prize, you find the prize, put the student name in, that's then captured, and then it is automatically captured onto that individual's, that student's here. So you're absolutely right that we have staff, time and resources to be typing in the students' names. The Student Union does this as well for us, but then it is captured individually onto each of the PDFs dependent on the students themselves. And as Rob highlighted, we don't use SITs at the moment. We have an in-house system, platform, which has been extremely useful, as I highlighted, about manipulating and being able to make sure we can use this effectively. We are planning to move to a new system, which may be SITs, and I'm very aware that we will need to relink back in all of the benefits that we've had from having an in-house system into something that is more commercial, and it's something that we've challenged each of our through the tender process of what they might be able to do to help us. But I'm realistic that this may be something that falls out, or we may need to put something back in and make sure it still is automatically captured. The key thing for us is making sure the students don't have to go somewhere, that actually they engage with it and then they know it will be identified. Now, you highlighted that there may be activities that the students don't want on there. Well, there are two aspects to that. One is that we have a link to what are the verified activities, so the students will be aware of what will be in and what will be out. And we've been very clear that we want these activities to be what we call substantial. So if there's a student rep, that gets recognised, but actually if there needs to be a student rep who has really informed this process, not just been to one meeting and not the rest. So that's the sort of thing the Student Union reviews for us. Now, if a student doesn't want to have an activity placed on that, we highlight on the web page and in their own, what we call My UE, their own personal area, that they can then contact the stakeholder to have it removed. That's absolutely their call to have that done. We haven't had that, I have to say, thus far, but it is possible.
Okay, thanks for that.
Thanks there, John.
Thank you very much, Julie. Julie, there's just a question from Amanda a little bit lower down, and it may be too early to answer this definitively, but it's around anything it's possible to say about student perceptions of the value of the HERE post-graduation in the job market. I suspect there won't be much research just yet because it's too early to know, but you may have some feedback, and Amanda may want to come in and sort of extend that question a bit.
I'll just see if Amanda does want to come in.
Can you hear me?
I can, thank you, Amanda.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. I just wondered whether you're following any of the students that have been part of your pilot, because it would be great to get a feedback loop to know, that with certain career choices, certain modules help them better. It's that sort of quite a rich opportunity to capture information that would be useful in the loop system, really.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right, Amanda. We actually aren't following any students who have taken up the HERE itself. I have some anecdotal comments around the HERE, and I have some research that we've done on co-curricular activities. So first of all, the anecdotal from the students, what it appears to be is that the students have downloaded it and just attach it to their CV. So the students have said they like that, they like the fact that they can attach it. When I've then gone further and said, well, what was the benefit, and did you talk it over with the employer, that hasn't been captured quite so well. So I have a feeling that what the students are doing is really just seeing it as something that someone else can sort out in many ways, and I guess the employer could work their way through it, rather than using it as something that they could identify in their CV by saying, and as you can see from my HERE, I've done some verified activities and such like. So we're very aware we probably need a little bit more work on students seeing it more than just something they can download and staple to or highlight in their application, to something that they really do use as, here it is verified, I put up my CV, but actually it was verified even by the university. So that's really about the here, but as Rob said, I think it's a little bit early, but it's a very good idea to actually think about discussing with our alumni their views on that. We have done work very much on some of our interventions, so a lot of the placements, internships attached to, which would be included in the here, in trying to work out whether the students have found that they recognise the attributes that they gained and whether it has helped them. And certainly the interventions have helped both on their awareness of the attributes, although it is always post-university. If you ask them about the attributes while they're here, just about to leave, they're not so aware of them. They see it as just something the university gave them. But a couple of months later, they can articulate those very clearly and are very, very aware of the difference in their ability to get graduate employment. So it doesn't completely answer your question, but that's where we're at with it.
Actually, it's just a comment on, I don't know, are you familiar with the Delhi survey done at 6 months post-graduation? Yes. It might be worth considering adding comments or questions into that, because I think there is a question just on the value, how do they perceive the value of their degree, but I mean it could be extended slightly to include just even the terminology of the here report if you've done it, but it would be good to catch an opportunity to capture it anyway on a wide scale.
We could certainly do that, and I'll talk it with employability and see whether we can add, as I said, our own specific commentary around that, and particularly cross fingers this year we can get it out, because actually that would be the second year. Last year we didn't want to raise expectations because it was just our first year of sending that out. This year the students will be much more aware of it, so I think it's a legitimate question and they'll know what it's about.
Just to say on that, Amanda and John as well, there's certainly some discussions going on about the possibility of adding a question around the here into the Delhi survey, a direct question.
Oh, fantastic. That would be useful to know, Rob, with that, when that happens.
Yeah, I think it's one of those that people will be consulted upon, and I think when we had the meeting with colleagues, it was raised as a possibility, but it would have to go through a consultative process. So if it comes your way, then it's important. If you want that to happen, you affirm its importance, really. But that's the most recent information that's around. Certainly, it's under discussion.
I think that's very useful. Go on, John.
Sorry, Julie. No, I was just going to say, I suppose the really long term could be that the, if the here is being used electronically to be given to employers, that data could be gathered automatically for Delhi.
Yes.
That would be very useful, and I think as Rob knows, a lot of us are now ahead of the game, because I think UUK have just accepted that they will do it, I think it's for next year, because they accepted it in 3 years' time, and that was 2 years ago. So it would be useful, because I think a lot of us will be ahead of the game and be able to answer some of those questions, or get the students to answer some of those questions of the benefits. I'm particularly interested in the fact that the employers seem much more interested in their marks and actually the modules that they've undertaken, because I think that's something we need to be able to support all our students about, who feel that the classification is what's going to be looked at, but actually the here will allow them to then have some sort of a benchmark about key subject areas in some professions. So I think we need to be able to support our students in knowing that that is something employers will look for.
Yes, and I particularly liked your point in the sense about we'll need to translate the language we use about modules and awards into language that's comprehensible to the wider community.
Absolutely. I mean, academics, you look at some of the modules and you realise we understand it, but it doesn't make much sense anywhere else. So yes, we'll have to have a review.
Absolutely. Okay, are there other points that people want to pick up in what Julie's been talking about before we finish up? Time for another question or so. Okay, we'll perhaps take silence as meaning, well, simply silence. Okay, the recording will be available, and the PowerPoint slides will be available. We'll be able to pick those up later on, and we'll let you know when that happens. As Kath just pointed out, thanks very much to Julie. That's been tremendous, above and beyond the call of duty. I really do thank you for that. really fantastic